You're listening live to Rightside Radio with Phil Williams. It's hard to go wrong when you're on the right side. Rightside Radio. Solid, conservative, and just plain right.
Alabama and Tennessee syndicated news talk leader, Rightside Radio. Phil Williams here live in the Rightside studios. Man, we got the local, the state, the national, covering down on all the issues. And, oh yeah, like the dude just said, solid, conservative, and just plain right. Well, welcome to Day of Days. It is Friday, y'all. It is Friday all day long. We got the sound effect for that one. Hit it, man. Friday! Yes, indeed. And we're going to get you all the way to go home time on a Friday afternoon. And pushing the buttons so ably on the board would be the JP. Hey, man, how you doing?
I'm good. How you doing this
Good.
Friday?
I'm good. I'm glad it's Friday, to be honest.
This week kind of flew by.
It did.
But at the same time,
It
was
did.
packed.
Yes, it was. It was crazy packed. Yeah. And listen, I promise I won't say skibbity the whole time. I really won't. I won't. Let's just let's not do that today. We won't skibbity today.
I mean, you'll gain your younger generation, I guess.
Okay. Hey, listen, we got all kinds of stuff laid on for you today. 3 o'clock today. It's Friday. You know the deal. We step aside from culture and politics for a minute, take a look at other things that are important in life, like sports. And JP is the man on sports. So yeah, at 3 o'clock today, we will go to JP on Sports. Stand by for that one. And then I still got a triple dipper just filled up with stuff. So hit it, man.
The Triple Dipper. 3 stories you've got to know.
That's right, the triple dipper, 3 stories, 3 themes, if you will, that you got to know as we run today's show. First out the gate, the budget bill and more. I mean, I literally started this morning to do the budget bill, which the Senate did an all-nighter last night. I saw a video of Katie Britt leaving to catch her plane at like 5:45 this morning to head back home for the weekend. But yeah, it is. It was an all-nighter, and they got it done. But then I realized I can't just talk about that. So when it comes to D.C., we're going to talk about the budget bill and more because, y'all, there's a lot of and more. Number 2 on the triple dipper, soft on crime. I'm always curious when I see Republicans floating bills that appear to be soft on crime. We've got one right now in the Alabama State Legislature that would allow for those who have been convicted and sentenced to a life sentence in prison to then be allowed to bring it back for a resentencing. Like, is that a new version of appeal? Is it an extra layer of appeal? What is that? Why are we doing that? We'll talk about all that. Number 2 on the triple dipper, plus a little stuff thrown into it to kind of add to it, soft on crime. And then number 3, I got to go international, y'all, Israel. Did you see what happened just in the last, 24, 36 hours? With a mother and 2 toddlers that were murdered by Hamas, and then their bodies returned like they had been some kind of convicts, and Hamas was celebrating. Like, look what we did. We kept them prisoner. No, you killed them. We're going to talk about that and more in an update on Israel. I didn't even bother trying to give it a witty name. This whole dipper is just called Israel, and that should speak volumes. All right, that's a lot of stuff, so we're going to unpack it as we go. Right now, though, I got to jump on into the Rightside Way opening monologue, and I'll remind you guys that attorney Stan McDonald, he is indeed the sponsor daily of the Rightside Way monologue. He's a partner at the law firm of Wilmer and Lee, and I'll tell you more about him in just a few minutes. But yeah, Stan McDonald, sponsor of the Rightside Way. So there's a song that I love by a Christian artist, Michael W. Smith. I mean, he's been around for a while, right? It's only a few years old, the song itself. Michael W. Smith's been recording for like 40 years. But the song is called Surrounded, This Is How I Fight My Battles. And when you hear the song, you realize that's just the way he likes it. He says, it may look like I'm surrounded, but I'm surrounded by you. It's an awesome song. It's also one of those that'll get stuck in your head in the right way. Well, let me just say, over the last few years, liberals thought they had us surrounded. They did. Maybe they did, and too often we acted like it, but liberals, they made us disjointed at times. We suffered some losses, but I'm telling you, I'm sensing more resolve than ever. What we're watching right now is exactly what we voted for. And don't let them tell you any different. But we're also not done. And we got to stay in this thing using every tool, every trick, every technique and tactic unified under one banner. This is how we fight our battles. This is how we win. But it doesn't start, though, with all targets that surround us being taken out all at one time. The pushback, the regaining of ground, the ability to retake that which was lost, it usually starts with one warrior hitting one target and inspiring others to do likewise. And sometimes that's really all it takes. One person squaring off to one of the enemies that surrounds them and removing that enemy with extreme prejudice. And I think that's the underlying story of what's happening with Trump right now. Yes, he's a Republican. Yes, he's fixing things in D.C. and elsewhere. Yes, he's bringing back common sense politics. But he's doing it from a position of strength, and the inspiration that we feel about it right now, I think, is beyond political. It's more than just putting liberals in their place. We can look at Trump right now, and this is what I think the vast majority of America sees. We see somebody who was viciously persecuted, frivolously sued, falsely indicted, somebody who was lied about, defamed, and maligned, somebody who was subjected to potential financial ruin. His family was mocked. His name was lampooned in the media. He was yelled at, shot at, and he kept getting back up and getting right back in the fight. And it is that inspiration that I believe has taken America by storm. We want to see the executive orders. We want to see the realigning of government. Oh, yes, but we also take heart in knowing that we've been completely surrounded for the last few years. He was right there with us. And then we watch him square off his shoulders to the enemy and fight right back. And it brings us into the fight with him. It's that battlefield inspiration. It means something. It means something to someone face down an opponent against what seems like overwhelming odds. A friend of mine served in Kandahar, Afghanistan at the beginning of the war. He told me a story about one of the special forces guys that he was with that was getting attacked in close quarters in the streets of Kandahar who suffered a shot to the face. But that Green Beret he was talking about just immediately assessed his own wounds. He slapped something on it to stem the blood. He acquired his target and he took out the enemy shooter. My friend told me after that, the word on the street in Kandahar was, these Americans, you can shoot them in the face and they will just fix themselves and then kill you. It made me laugh. I was all the way up in the northern part of the country in Kunduz, Afghanistan, hours away, but when I heard that story, it still gave me like an extra dose of moxie, right? But that was also his training. His training, that soldier I'm talking about, his training was designed to make him ready to stay in the fight against all odds, to square up to his target and take it out. And y'all, that's how we fight our battles. But if you've noticed, I do keep using a phrase, squaring off to the target. What is that? What does that even mean? Squaring off to the target. It's an important aspect of how we face an enemy. It's intimidating to do, but it's even more intimidating for the enemy to see. So in some of the instruction that I used to provide to troops, I would show them a video. It's still out there on YouTube. You can check it out. Probably it's called, This is Why the U.S. Military Wears Body Armor. It's a blurry video of a young Army trooper in Iraq standing next to his Humvee on a city street. But you quickly realize that the video is being made by insurgents who are targeting this soldier. And a shot rings out, and the young troop drops like a rock, but he immediately gets back to his feet. His weapon goes up, and he looks to acquire his target and return fire. The enemy round had actually hit him square in the sappy plate of his body armor, and he was fine. It knocked him down like he'd been hit with a bat, but he was fine. Oh, and they got the bad guy, by the way. Look, I'm going to tell you, every Joe who saw that video stopped griping about having to wear a ballistic vest. But if you've ever had any experience at all with firearms, you know that, like anything else, shooting is an acquired skill. I'm sure, knowing this audience, we have a whole passel of Second Amendment-friendly right-side ruffians who listen. Everything from the casual gun owner who just keeps a firearm or two on hand for home protection or hunting, all the way up to the serious collector and those who participate in shooting sports. But basic shooting does come down to some basics. Things like proper use and care of your weapon, your body position, your sight alignment, your breathing control, your trigger squeeze. But shooting at a fixed target at a known distance in the prone position under highly regulated conditions, that's just your introduction, man. The real fun comes when you get to the point that you're able to conduct things like reflexive fire training, like being allowed to shoot, move, and communicate under more stressful conditions with the brain more fully engaged. You track your rounds, you reload while you're still maintaining a fighting posture. You learn to stage your magazine so you can reload quickly with your eyes closed or in the dark. And one of the most unnatural aspects of doing so is called squaring off to your target. Here's the thing. If you're in an armed confrontation and cover and concealment is not your option, then how you present yourself to the opposing target matters. And the natural inclination is to slim your profile, provide less of a target by turning to your side. But when you're in combat and you're wearing body armor, the side panels of your ballistic vest, they don't have near as much protection. The true ability of your body armor to shield you comes from the protective plates in the front and the back. They cover the vital organs. So the training for those who wear armor is to adopt a stance that's called squaring your shoulders to the enemy. It's also a stance, though, by the way, that shows the enemy you mean business. It's also unnatural. It requires training. In other words, you have to get used to it. And truthfully, it also requires a measure of faith. But here's my point. It takes training to remember the value and the use of the armor. It takes faith to trust that it will work to square off to the enemy. You see, what I'm saying is that life is going to be filled with challenges. And even enemies, some of which are self-created, some from outside your own control, but they're there. Jesus said, in this world you will have trouble, but fear not, I've overcome the world. So it's a clear acknowledgement that life can get a bit dicey at times. How you are when the moment of conflict or confrontation or challenge arrives is going to be largely dependent upon the level of preparation you put into such an occurrence way before it happens. And how much are you willing to trust that the armor you've prepared to use on that day is actually going to provide you some protection? Are you ready to square off to the enemy? Can you face down the enemy by looking them straight in the eye, squaring your shoulders? Look, I don't know what it is, but I feel certain that in an audience of this size, that some of you are having life challenges or you see some coming. I want to encourage you to know that you don't have to be perfect at handling them on the first day, but you do have to make a decision to improve. You have to just start the process of preparing and trusting. You just start. You take the first simple steps. No one becomes a Green Beret on the first day in the Army, right? They all start with basic training. So, what is it? Is it a job skill for you? Start. Is it overcoming an addiction? Just start. Is it improving or even saving your marriage? Just start. Is it going for that degree you've talked about or that job change or that political office? Just start. You prepare well in advance. You build your character and your skill and your faith and the ability to move forward. You square your shoulders to the enemy when you're surrounded even. You actually need to do it. Training and faith. You can have all the gee-whiz education, equipment, and resources, but if you don't believe in your ability to square your shoulders to the enemy, you won't. Likewise, though, you can be reckless. You can be somebody who leaps without looking, performs without practicing. And I would say at that point, your likelihood of success is diminished. You see, squaring off to the target is both unnatural, but it's also needed. It takes practice, but it also takes believing that your armor is going to work. And life is like that. And that's the reason why I really believe that Trump is so popular right now. It's not a question of whether he's just doing all the right policies. It's also that we saw him go through the fights and square his shoulders to the enemy, and we are willing to do the same. So pick out your plan. Practice and prepare. Move toward the target. Square your shoulders. Get her done. And that's a wrap for the Right Side Way. Well, I would imagine somebody need to hear that. Audience this size, I would suspect so. Truth be told, maybe I needed to hear it. But all of this is real, y'all. Trump didn't just, and I'm not a huge Trump acolyte, right? I mean, he screws up sometimes, but what I'm saying is Trump gave us not just a reasonable expectation of good policy and politics, he also gave us an inspiration. He squared his shoulders against the surrounding of an enemy, and he began taking them out one at a time. It's good stuff. Phil Williams, Right Side Radio. Y'all stay tuned. We'll be right back. And we are back. Phil Williams, Rightside Radio. Solid, conservative, and just plain right. Like saving the world one soundbite at a time. Text lines are open, 833-687-4448. That's 833-68-RIGHT. Text it or call it. Same number for both. Hey, listen, before I go any further, I got to just jump right in there and tell you, Stan McDonald. So Stan McDonald, yes, he is indeed the sponsor daily of the Right Side Way monologue. He's an attorney with the law firm of Wilmer and Lee, a partner there, actually. He's a 30-year veteran in the practice of law in North Alabama. And listen, not only is Stan the kind of guy who's going to advocate well for your legal needs, but he has been an absolute warrior over the years. I know it personally, a warrior for all the things and the cultural issues and the politics that right side ruffians care about. Now, I will also tell you, Stan McDonald, he's literally represented his clients in thousands of real estate transactions. He can assist you in local, state, and federal courts. I like to say when Stan McDonald's on your side, you will have no greater friend, and likewise, your adversary would have no greater foe. So yes, I'm going to tell you how to reach him. I'm going to give you his phone number. Stand by. You ready? Stan McDonald. The law firm is Wilmer and Lee. He's an America First family man, and here's his phone number, 256-479-3020. That's Stan McDonald, 256-479-3020. And do me the biggest favor of telling me you heard about it on Right Side Radio. And here's that thing I got to do. No representation made. The quality of legal service we perform is greater than the quality of legal service we perform with other lawyers.
One of your better ones.
Skibbity. All right. Charlene's listening. She's cringing. Honey, I'm not going to keep doing that, I promise. But right now, it's still a little funny to me. How much time we got right now? I have time for that clip from...
Got about a minute and a half.
All right. Before I go to text messages, I got to play you a clip because we're talking about budget bill and more in D.C. Part of the more is putting people on notice that there's a new sheriff in town. Stephen Miller spoke at the... do I have time? Am I going to burn it?
I'll be cut off by the music, but...
Let's don't. Tell you what, I'll hold it right after the break. Stephen Miller, you're going to want to hear this. Stephen Miller came into the press conference yesterday, was asked something, I don't know what sparked it, but he literally schooled the press for a minute because they're asking all the questions about, well, people are losing their jobs, and aren't you scared? And don't you think this is mean? Why are we doing this? And is it constitutional? And what's up? And the president, why? Okay, he gave him a civics lesson bar none. So we get back from the break, we'll play that. I will say this. I got several text messages regarding the monologue. One from Harvest, and I won't say a name, but I appreciate you. He says, that was from me. Thank you, sir. You are most welcome, sir. Bert from Owens Crossroads says, Phil, awesome monologue. The fight like you train sure has saved lives ever since the FBI in Miami in 1986 when the agents were picking up empty brass during a firefight. They were so conditioned to pick up brass after shooting. Wow. That's there you go. Thank you, Bert. Bert's had a great career too, by the way. I happen to know. Got a brand new texter in the line. Call themselves Fritzy. Is it Fritzy? Says, hope and inspiration are powerful. Thank you for your powerful monologue. You are most welcome, Fritzy. And by the way, tell us where you're from, but we're glad you're in the text lines and we got you now. All right, more to come. Phil Williams, Right Side Radio. Y'all stay tuned. We will be right back. Hey, all you Rightside ruffians out there, you are listening to Rightside Radio, solid conservative, just plain right. And we are back. Phil Williams, Rightside Radio, solid conservative and just plain right. Just covering down on some major ground across the southeast U.S. of A. Y'all, I am talking about this show. Whew. Goes like from Huntsville all the way back on over to Chattanooga. I'm talking about from Tuscaloosa back over to Gadsden. I mean all the way down to that prettiest little town on the plains called Auburn. And y'all even got big old patches of Georgia and Mississippi all thrown in just for good measure. Notice how I say that? Mississippi. Mississippi. I say Mississippi.
Mississippi.
Boy. Yeah, you don't do every syllable. It's Mississippi. I got some text messages I'll catch up on here momentarily. I tell you what, let me do that real quick. I'll just do that real quick. TL from Huntsville says, excellent monologue, Phil. Thank you, sir. Says, a true leader has the confidence, this is a quote, by the way, a true leader has the confidence to stand alone, the courage to make tough decisions, the compassion to listen to the needs of others. He does not set out to be a leader, but he becomes one by the equality of his actions and the integrity of his intent. That's Douglas MacArthur. TL's always got the quotes, man.
I wonder if these are all in his memory or if he's got a book or something.
Either way, he knew where to find it.
Yeah.
He also said, I think Trump fits this description and he inspires others to stand together in the battle, stay in the fight. Absolutely. Allie from Athens says, Colonel, while I understand that squaring one's shoulders is largely symbolic here, that action has served to save lives, and I will explain. Said when traffickers were trying to target 12 and 13-year-olds by trolling at places like shopping malls, they'll approach a young lady and give her a compliment. And if she squares her shoulders and looks them in the eye, says thank you, and moves on, they know she's not a good target. If she slumps her shoulders, looks down, and then lingers, they know they got her. Maybe someone needs to hear that today as well. Squaring one's shoulders really is a thing. Thank you for this monologue. Wow, Allie. Wow. Good stuff. Shag Nasty the Atheist checking in. Shag Nasty, what have you sent me? Shag Nasty sends me this, Trump deletes the nationwide database on police misconduct. Okay, what's your source on that? Reddit? That's your source? That's your source? Shag Nasty. Come on.
Hey, but at least he's still listening, so maybe not all hope is lost on Shag
That's
Nasty.
right.
You know, maybe
Shag
we can
Nasty,
wear on him.
That's right. Stay with us. We love you in spite of yourself. John from Huntsville says, Phil, fantastic monologue. Also, did you hear that more than 370,000 Tesla vehicles have been recalled due to power steering issues? I had not heard that. By the way, JP, after Alabama lost to Missouri on Wednesday night, 110-98, I no longer have them winning the March Madness tournament.
Hey, you know what? This weekend's a bounce back weekend. Okay, we're too good to be in a slump for too long.
Sounds like we're going into JP on sports already.
Yeah, and I prefer to be under the radar.
Okay. Hey, listen, I got to tell you guys, too, in a few minutes, we had to call a bit of an audible. So some of y'all know I was on News Nation the other day, and they wanted me in midday, and that's not going to happen very often, but they actually called and asked for me to come back on today. How do I do this? Well, I cloned myself. That's what we did. So I have now cloned myself. I'll be in two places at one time.
You can't tell them the technology we have here. We are supposed to keep that under wraps.
Don't tell them. Anyway, the bottom line is this. There will be, coming up here in a little bit, a section of the show that we pre-recorded. Those of y'all listening on radio or watching the live stream, you won't even know the difference. I'm even going to wear the same shirt. So all that to say, pre-record is going to take over part of the show just for a short amount of time, and I'll be back. You won't know the difference, but I will be on News Nation coming up at the 3 o'clock hour for a few minutes on a military panel. So looking forward to that and thankful for the opportunity. And then last one before I go to the topics, John from Brownsboro said, I just spent 2 weeks dealing with my addiction and the resulting health issues that were threatening. Well, John, listen, I hope you're well and blessings on you, man. And you square your shoulders to that problem right there and do not let up. So stay in the fight. All right, listen, I got an audio clip here. This is Stephen Miller, who is the, I believe, the Deputy Chief of Staff to the President, one of his senior advisors. There are times when I almost can't listen to Stephen Miller because he gets so animated and hyped up. You're thinking the guy's got way too much Red Bull in him. But no, this time he comes to the microphone. He very calmly, cogently, and very efficiently dismantles the press with a civics lesson on all of their complaints. Let's go ahead and play Stephen Miller at a presser at the White House. Go.
It is true that many of the people in this room for 4 years failed to cover the fact that Joe Biden was mentally incompetent and was not running the country. It is also true that many people in this room who have used this talking point that Elon is not elected fail to understand how government works. So I'm glad for the opportunity for a brief civics lesson. A president is elected by the whole American people. He's the only official in the entire government that is elected by the entire nation, right? Judges are appointed, members of Congress are elected at the district or state level, just one man. And the Constitution, Article 2, has a clause known as the vesting clause, and it says the executive power shall be vested in a president, singular. The whole will of democracy is imbued into the elected president. That president then appoints staff to then impose that democratic will onto the government. The threat to democracy, indeed the existential threat to democracy, is the unelected bureaucracy of lifetime tenured civil servants who believe they answer to no one, who believe they can do whatever they want without consequence, who believe they can set their own agenda no matter what Americans vote for. So Americans vote for radical FBI reform, and FBI agents say they don't want to change. Or Americans vote for radical reform on our energy policies, but EPA bureaucrats say they don't want to change. Or Americans vote to end DEI, racist DEI policies, and lawyers at the Department of Justice say they don't want to change. What President Trump is doing is he is removing federal bureaucrats who are defying democracy by failing to implement his lawful orders, which are the will of the whole American people.
That is an epic dismantling of the mainstream media who sits there every day chicken littling the topics like, aren't you afraid? I mean, people are losing their jobs. Isn't this mean? I get it. On the one hand, you don't want to see anybody lose their job. At the same time, you have to also recognize that the executive branch is called upon to most efficiently and effectively, for the betterment of the entire nation, run the federal government. That's the role of the chief executive. And that also means he has to make hard decisions sometimes. I mean, they had no trouble at all telling us that the private sector was essential versus non-essential during COVID, did they? They didn't have any trouble at all telling us that they were going to spend our money on LGBTQ versions of Sesame Street in Iraq. They had no trouble at all telling us that climate change was the existential threat to America and downgrading our military readiness to pursue climate issues. But yet, the press questions Republicans when they begin to make actual, cogent, reasonable decisions. I've got a piece here from townhall.com that points out that everything Trump is doing is being challenged in court, except he winds up winning on some of them, and they don't want to deal with that. Right now, we got a piece from Town Hall, Dateline last night. Lawsuits, well, guess what? U.S. District Judge Christopher Cooper, who is, by the way, an Obama appointee, declared or delivered a victory for the president and his administration. All of these mass firings he's talking about, or the layoffs, or the reduction in force, Cooper ruled the unions brought it in the wrong forum. They don't have the luxury of bringing it to court right now. He ruled they're going to have to go to the Federal Labor Relations Authority, meaning Trump's actions stand for now because they chose the wrong forum to fight it. It doesn't mean they won't prevail eventually on the merits. It doesn't mean that they had a good case or not a good case. What he said is, you're fighting in the wrong place, and I'm not going to let you do that. So what that means is Trump is already moving forward as best he can, doing the things he knows he can. They're not even fighting in the right forum right now. They are so on their heels that they are completely caught off guard by the idea that when they even try to challenge what he's doing, they don't do it in the right way. And yet they're going to call out Trump for making these decisions. Now, what other things are happening? So in a minute, I'm going to talk about the budget bill that basically came out of an all-night Senate session. Pretty epic. But I can tell you right now, we're watching this across the board. Like, for instance, Daily Wire. Pam Bondi just fired an attorney, a general counsel for the Bureau of ATF, the Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms, and Explosives. ATF senior counsel Pamela Hicks was relieved of her duties and escorted from the building. What? Yes. She even posted earlier today, I was served notice from the AG of the United States that I was being removed from my position, yada, yada, yada. Yep. And I had the privilege of serving. Thank you for your 28 years. Yes. But Gun Owners of America point out that she presided over nearly every Second Amendment infringement during the Biden administration that there was. And so, is she gone? Yes, and she should be. She does not seem to align herself with the principles and the rules and the goals of the current administration. How about this one? Change in policy. The new Secretary of Energy, that'd be Energy Secretary Chris Wright, just announced, oh, by the way, that global warming, climate change is not the existential threat. It is not, in his words, near the world's biggest problem. Y'all, it is a whole new day. He said this, he said, everything was a trade-off. But yeah, there's pluses to global warming. Pluses? There's pluses to global warming? There's pluses to global warming. He said, but the bottom line is it's nowhere near the world's biggest problem, not even close. He said, net zero 2050, that's a sinister goal. It's a terrible goal. He said, the aggressive pursuit of it. He said, you're sitting in a country right now that has aggressively pursued the net zero goal. It's delivered no benefits, but it's delivered tremendous costs. All right, listen, we're taking a break right now. We'll take that break. We'll come right back, and we'll talk about what happened with the budget bills last night, because that in itself is epic. Phil Williams, Rightside Radio. Y'all stay tuned. We will be right back. And we are back. Phil Williams, Rightside Radio. Solid, conservative, and just plain right. Making common sense like a superpower. All right, so listen, I got to have a discussion here for a few minutes about several things. And I started off the show telling you that Dipper number one was on budget bills and more. And I tell you what I love is the fact that there's an and more. I mean, this is not a single-faceted Trump administration. Not by a long. He's, Biden liked to say we're using the whole of government approach, and it was like dum-de-dum-de-dum, and it was. There were times when it was a frenzy, and there are other times when it was like, oh, we called a lid on the day at 7:00. It never happens with the Trump administration. Not for a second. That being said, all of what I call the Trump team, and that's all of his appointments, his cabinet officials, his advisors, they are all like gainfully employed. And what's really interesting is they are constantly in front of the press. Constantly. Now, granted, they all have to be in sync and on the same message, right? And I've seen the press already trying to divide, like Pete Hegseth from Michael Waltz, the National Security Advisor. I've seen them already trying to get Caroline Leavitt to say something different than what Pam Bondi said. But what I've noticed is they all stay on message, but they're also all being given the ability to stand in front of the press, and they do it on a regular basis. And that's just, y'all, that's a whole new day. I mean, before, how many times did we see, and I'm going to say her name, you haven't had to hear it in a while, Karine Jean-Pierre get up there with the notebook, and she would read something from the notebook on page 3, and then she would take issue, and she would look like she hated her job, and then she would say something schmarmy, and she would leave the room. We're watching right now as they're catching Michael Waltz out on the White House lawn. They got Caroline Leavitt in the press. They got the press being allowed in to see the president in the Oval Office and free-range questions. And then they also catch him again when he's on Air Force One. He comes back to the press section of the plane and has discussions. This is every single day. But here's something else, and I wanted to touch on this for a minute. What we're also watching is, for the first time, Republicans, as a broad spectrum, seem to actually be working in a cohesive manner. Last night, if you're not familiar, the U.S. Senate knuckled down and pulled a late-nighter. And I don't mean like, well, Phil, what's so hard about? What's hard about that is when you're debating bills, you got to be ready for votes, and y'all don't realize they don't sit in the chamber the entire time. They have to go back to their offices and then run back to the Senate chamber to make a vote, which is not close. It's through a tunnel and about a half mile away. So this happens nonstop. Well, last night, and I got a piece here from Daily Signal. Last night, the Senate GOP chose not to back down from Democrats. Now, I'll be honest, I was one of the first ones to say I am not wild about John Thune being the majority leader in the Senate. I wanted someone else who I felt like was gamier, somebody who had a little more Freedom Caucus style to him. I thought John Thune was establishment, and he may wind up later on proving that that's the case. But John Thune did push through the Senate GOP's budget reconciliation bill. Both of your U.S. senators in Alabama and all of them in Tennessee voted for the bill. So what we're looking at right now is a piece of legislation that came out after an all-night session that puts the vast majority of the Trump legislative agenda in play. Because executive orders are great, but until you've got congressional authority attached to something for the president to sign, it's not law. It can be undone, it can be reversed, it can be sometimes ignored and then have to be reinterpreted in the courts, but once it becomes the law because Congress passed it, it's a whole new ballgame. So the piece that I've got from Daily Signal talks about the fact that the Senate GOP did not back down. The piece that I picked up here, Dateline this morning from Fox News, talks about the all-night session in the Senate at a 52-48 vote, with Senator Rand Paul being the only one who withheld his vote to pass a piece of legislation that secures the border with funding, implements the border and immigration policies that Trump has asked for, helps put money back into rebuilding our military, and creates what they call an energy dominance for this country. Now that's nothing but good. Now here's the one caveat. I've been very open about saying that I prefer the House version. Why? because the House version also had the Trump tax cuts built in. For reasons I don't fully understand, the Senate chose not to do the tax cuts in the same bill. They say they're going to do a separate bill. My concern is that by doing two bills, you run the risk of something not happening. But the Senate believed that they couldn't get it all passed with the tax cuts attached to it, which means there's some Republicans that are still not on board with that. Meanwhile, the House has got the so-called big, beautiful one bill. And that's still in play as we speak. If they wind up passing the big, beautiful one bill in the House, and they decide to go ahead and marry the two, then there will have to be a second round of debate. What could also happen, though, is I'll be honest with you, this is a little bit of gamesmanship. The Senate just put the House on notice. Hey, House, we just passed most of what you want to do. You can pick up ours and pass it right now. And they could, and the president could sign it next week. I mean, they could literally, well, it'll be quicker than that because it's not quite that quick because it has to go through committee. But that bill is now being transmitted from the all-night session the Senate held, I mean, like in the chamber for hours, with Democrats trying to get all kinds of amendments put on to weaken it. But the bill came through. It now gets transmitted to the House. It goes through committee process. If they choose to take up the Senate version, this could be over with pretty soon. And then we're back to looking at, let's get the Trump tax cuts put in place permanently. Like, let's don't do the sunset on them. Let's say we're done with screwing around on this. We want tax cuts to last forever. Anyway, all that happened last night. I love seeing Republicans actually work because you may say, but Trump wanted the whole bill and the Senate didn't give it to him. That's not saying they weren't pushing the agenda. It's saying they're pushing it in a different fashion, but they did push the agenda. I mean, I'm excited right now. Securing the border, beefing up the military for readiness purposes, and creating energy dominance. Look, you add the Trump tax cuts to that later on, and your Rightside Radio guy here is going to be really, really happy. So anyway, listen, this is big doings. All right, coming up after the break, we're going to be taking up some time, getting away from culture and politics, going to be doing some JP on sports. So yeah, you guys, listen, stay tuned. We will be right back.
You're listening live to Rightside Radio with Phil Williams. It's hard to go wrong when you're on the right side. Rightside Radio. Solid, conservative, and just plain right.
Alabama and Tennessee syndicated news talk leader, Rightside Radio. Phil Williams here live in the Rightside studios. Man, we got the local, the state, the national, sometimes the international, and oh yeah, like the dude just said, solid, conservative, and just plain right. Well, okay, so a slight, like a second audible, like an audible upon an audible. so I'm not on News Nation at the moment because they shifted that time to 3:30, which is fine because it's all gonna work out. But now I'm highly overdressed for radio.
I was about to say, yeah. Like last segment, you were in a pullover, and now you're in a coat and
and a snappy shirt.
Yeah,
like what Charlie would call a snappy shirt.
But thankfully we got the clone of you and the pullover ready in the closet.
It's all about the clone.
So
if you can clone yourself, you can get a lot done.
Yeah,
I'm a big fan of cloning. All right, so we're going to continue this thread that we're on about the budget bill and more. All right, so the budget bill and more. So the and more is intriguing. Like, for instance, JP, did you see last night our favorite Argentinian president giving almost like it looked like a silver-plated chainsaw to Musk? Did you see that?
Do you mean this guy?
Afuera! Afuera! That's it.
Yes, I did. Yeah, that's
pretty
awesome.
He doesn't say skibbity. He says afuera! So, yeah, that was hilarious. In fact, but what was funny more than anything was Musk's reaction. Mm-hmm. It was like he had just been given the greatest gift ever.
This is the guy that's worth the most of any human being in the world, and yet he got excited with a chainsaw.
Now, what I couldn't tell was a chainsaw. Was it engraved? Did it have some kind of a?
Yeah, I don't know what messages was, but it looked like it was a special made chainsaw. Yeah.
Well, that one needs to be in a glass case in the Doge office.
Yeah, I would say frame it in the Doge office.
Come on. But that's part of the more, right? That it is amazing to me how much is happening, and it's like we talked about on the air yesterday. Like JP and I, we sort of like this is our job, right? This is we're supposed to keep up. It's hard to keep up. I was saying earlier, I looked at Trump on a video screen, and the man looks tired, and we need him to get some rest once in a while. I mean, for 4 years, I was like, "Are you kidding me?" Biden called another lid. I'm ready for Trump to call a lid just to have himself an afternoon to catch up.
I mean, the only speed he knows is full throttle from literally his whole life. That's how he became such a successful businessman. Yeah. And that's why he's a good president. But yeah, I agree. He's got a good team around him that if he did just take like a day to just chill, I feel like everybody would help him with that.
Well, and I'm an early riser, me personally. Today I actually overslept. I slept past 5. I don't know how to explain it, but this guy, I mean, he's going and going and going. But one of the things I also, part of the and more, the budget bill and more, which we're talking about, is, I almost think he's unchained right now, and I don't mean that in a bad way. I mean it's like, okay, the filter that may have been on during the first term, even that's gone. For instance, I have noticed more than once he is willing to call out other elected officials to their face, almost like he's on the debate stage having to face a presidential candidate or a nominee for a primary run. We saw that with the mayor of L.A., where he didn't give her any quarter right there in the room. We see that with the way he calls the press out when they try to ask him something erroneous or ridiculous. And it happened again today with the governor of Maine. You're the one that brought that by attention. What you enjoyed that too, didn't you?
It's a pretty epic clip. Yeah, it's funny.
Okay, so to give you some background, Trump had a mass gathering in the White House, and there were a lot of other governors and cabinet officials there for a big luncheon, and Trump addressed the crowd, and then he realized the governor of Maine was in the room. And he was talking about his order banning transgender dudes in women's sports. And then, can you hear it pretty good in the sound clip you've got?
Yeah, it's pretty good. Yeah.
Okay, this is President Trump and the governor Janet Mills of Maine. Go ahead.
I understand Maine. Is Maine here, the governor of Maine? Well, are you not going to comply with it?
I'm complying with state and federal laws.
We are the federal law. Well, you better do it. You better do it because you're not going to get any federal funding at all if you don't. And by the way, your population, even though it's somewhat liberal, although I did very well there, your population doesn't want men playing in women's sports. So you better comply because otherwise you're not getting any federal funding.
See you in court.
Every state, good. I'll see you in court. I look forward to that. That should be a real easy one. And enjoy your life after governor because I don't think you'll be in elected politics. Every state has a responsibility to comply with Title IX, to have an obligation, a legal obligation, and we'll be enforcing aggressively, and we're going to be protecting our citizens. We're going to protect. So just to...
So I guess, fair warning, if you're going to lunch at the White House, make sure you have an exit strategy.
And don't go toe-to-toe with Trump because he will win.
Yeah, especially when he's got a microphone and you don't.
Yeah.
You're sitting in the back of the room going, I'm here.
Yep.
I mean, when that's your response, I'm here.
I think she said, dang right I am, or something like that.
Oh, my gosh. Well, you know, those of us on the right side of politics are loving this moment. This is what we asked for. This is what we voted for. Now, there's a lot of things happening, and not everything is going perfectly, but the fact is they're still squaring off their shoulders. Like I said in my monologue, they're still squaring off their shoulders and working to get her done. And it's not like a little bit, it's a lot. I mean, they are doing something every single minute of every day, and it's exactly what we voted for. So what I'm seeing on social media right now is this massive trend towards Trump said this and we shouldn't let it happen, or Trump's going to fire everybody, or everybody's going to quit at this department, or the world's going to come to an end. And listen, you know what? No, it's not. We're going to be here tomorrow. We are. We're going to be here tomorrow, and we may have a streamlined government, and we may have some waste, fraud, and abuse that's been dealt with, and we may have some people who don't have their jobs who have one today. But the reality is, that's what you do when you run a business. And I don't mean like you axe people. That's not what I'm saying. But what you do is you look at the big picture and you decide, how do I keep the trains running? And in essence, you've got the president of the United States, an elected government official, now making private sector style business decisions. And that has not happened in D.C. and God knows when. Well, at least not since he was in office. How about that?
What? I say since what?
4 years.
2016.
Yeah. Yeah, at least to 2020.
Yeah.
All right. So, more to come. By the way, I will tell you this. There was breaking news a moment ago. Pete Hegseth did say that the terminations at the Pentagon, some of those are on hold while they review the legalities. In other words, he's saying, we're going to do it right. We're going to do it right. But if we can let somebody that needs to let go, we're going to find our way to do it, but we're also not going to do it willy-nilly. So let's keep that in mind. The other thing that also happened, and this is part of what I had in my stack of stuff, is Pam Bondi, Attorney General, says she has the Epstein client list sitting on her desk right now. Right now. Look, we've been asking for that for, what year did he allegedly kill himself in his cell?
2021, I believe, off the top of my head.
All I know is this is amazing to me, and I understand if there's something
2019, by the way.
2019, it's amazing to me that this has happened, and I think there's going to be people that are embarrassed, and I recognize that there is a potential for creating a defamation case if you release someone's name and implicate them in something they had nothing to do with. But the truth of the matter is, this is something that the public needs to know. Who within our sphere of influence was corrupt, was participating in some of the most heinous crimes like child trafficking? All that in the Diddy list too. I don't know. What do you think? Is Epstein list going to come out and ruin some careers?
Trump promised, Cash promised, Pam Bondi promised, and apparently it's on the track to do that. So I hope so. But what I hope is we don't get a list release with a bunch of redacted stuff in it, you know?
Yeah.
That's just what I hope. But yeah, I feel like the deep state is on the ropes, if not down and out already, with Kash Patel, and it's awesome.
I'm wondering how many foreign heads of state are on that list. I'm wondering how many Hollywood influencers are on that list. I wonder how many big name money people in the Democrat machine are on that list.
Well, the public, I think the big forum guy, public one that has been accused of being on it. What was Prince, the former Prince? I can't remember his name in England.
Oh yeah, Prince Andrew.
Prince Andrew, yeah. So we'll see. It's nuts.
Well, she says, Attorney General Pam Bondi, it's sitting on my desk right now to review. It's been a directive by President Trump. Okay, that's right. It was an executive order, wasn't it? She also says she's reviewing the JFK and the MLK files, which the president also ordered to be released. And she goes, it's all in the process of being reviewed because that was done at the directive of the president. When asked if she had seen anything, Bondi replied, not yet. In other words, it's sitting on her desk. She's going to be getting to it. But, y'all, I mean, the guy, he dies in federal custody in 2019, 6 years ago. And we're not able to see the list? Well, apparently we are now. And let's go ahead and just believe that it's the real list. How about that? Text messages, text them in, call them in, 833-687-4448. That's 833-68-RIGHT. And we'll get that input. I'll be stepping out momentarily, but you won't know the difference. I'm going to be jumping on to the News Nation for an interview on military personnel issues. So I will be right back in. We'll have some JP on sports coming up bottom of the hour. And then I got to tell you, today being Friday, the latest edition of Right Click is out. So Birdman's podcast, Right Click. Listen, we got a lot of podcasts. We got a lot of content. Rightside Media is the parent company. It is just what we do, man. And y'all, it's because of y'all. Because all of this, let me just tell you, I'll give you a quick testimony. All of this started with me sitting at my law firm desk with a microphone, wondering if anybody was listening. And now here we are just 4 years later. 4 years this month, I got the call. 4 years later, and we've got a company that now has a full-time radio show syndicated across multiple states, an op-ed that goes out to like 18 different newspapers around the region, and then 5 separate video podcasts. We got a merchandise store that's selling hats and T-shirts and coffee mugs and highball glasses and all of it. And every bit of that, y'all, is God's grace and your attention. So thank you very much. We appreciate it more than you could possibly know. All right, I'm stepping out. I'm going to be on TV. I'll come right back and be on radio. That's what I do. Phil Williams, Rightside Radio. Y'all stay tuned. We will be right back.
Welcome back, folks, to Rightside Radio. This is producer JP filling in briefly for this short segment while Phil has currently just stepped out to do News Nation. So that's pretty cool. It's the second time on News Nation this week, so he's making the rounds. But upcoming next segment, we got JP on Sports that we pre-recorded earlier today, so Phil will be back technically for that segment, and then he'll be back for sure the rest of the show after that segment, so make sure to stay tuned for that. 833-687-4448 is the text line number. Text it or call it for that matter. Before we get into text messages, I just wanted to promo real quick that the Right Side merch store is now live to everybody. It was originally only live to the newsletter subscribers, but it is now live to everybody. So if you want to go and purchase you a shirt, purchase you a highball glass or a hat, go check out our merch store. We got a lot of great stuff in there that we're getting out quickly to folks too, so there shouldn't be much of a wait time after you order it, but we greatly appreciate if you go check out the merch store. And also want to promote the newsletter. You heard me mention that we gave first dibs to newsletter subscribers, and we may do that with some stuff going forward. If you're in the newsletter, you get first dibs to stuff before everybody else. So we send out that newsletter daily of the resources for the show, some content that we're putting up on our YouTube, our social media stuff, and also sneak peeks on stuff you'll see on the upcoming show. It's free of charge. The only thing you have to do is text the word newsletter to 833-687-4448. And you'll get a link to subscribe to the newsletter, or you can go to our website, rightsidemedia.org. We would greatly appreciate that. We had some texts came in. Brian from Decatur texted in and says, speaking of climate change, have you ever noticed that all these liberal green New Deal people never criticize the biggest polluter in the entire world, China? They never say anything about China. Coal plants galore, carbon footprint off the charts, billowing CO2 gases into the atmosphere and unheard of rates, but nothing from the left. Yeah, it's true. And also, Biden puts out these EV mandates to where we have to depend on the world's leader in EV batteries, which is China. So, and if you look into the carbon emissions for making an EV battery, it's much more than a car itself. I promise you that. So, yeah, it's hypocrisy from the left, and that's all it is. We got Shorty from Anderson texting and said, hey, Phil, after all this time, I'm finally getting a chance to sit down and watch you live on the Right Side Radio broadcast. Excellent job, my brother. Well, I will let Phil know that you said that, Shorty. We appreciate it. And, yeah, we are live streaming the show every day, guys. So not only live on the radio airwaves, but we also live stream to our social media platforms, our YouTube channel, and to our website if you guys want to go check it out and give us a follow while you're there. We'd greatly appreciate that. We had a text come in from a first-time texter said, Phil, Shag Nasty is partially correct but materially incorrect. NLEAD, the National Law Enforcement Accountability Database, has been shut down, but it's been replaced by NDI, the National Decertification Index. Yeah, that was Shag Nasty texting in earlier about that. All right, thanks. Thomas from Athens also texted in and said, the new sheriff and each of his posse members are each squaring up to the many, many opponents, e.g. those guerrilla economics warrior who have been hidden, not caves or jungles, but have been fighting against Americans for decades, protected from being seen behind the mainstream media, as are you, sir, and your team. Yeah, it is crazy that it seems that all the air cover, it's gone from the mainstream media and what they've been saying and spewing over the last 4 years, and they're out in the open, and Trump is going at him, and he's not holding back. He's not pulling back punches. We played the clip last segment of Trump going at the Maine governor to her face, talking about how she and Maine will not be complying with Trump's executive order to ban transgender men from women's sports. But we talked about this last second. The reins are off. You know, he's not holding back at all. He's not pulling punches. He's not taking it easy on folks. He's going full-fledged, and he like I said, he's not holding back. This is a different Trump this time around. I think he got pissed off from how he was treated during the whole time he was out of office, and rightfully so. But he remembered all of that. He kept receipts, and he's not pulling back punches this time around in the White House. And he's giving the people what they voted for, and the mandate from the public was perfectly clear. And Trump is following up on that for sure. John from Huntsville texted in and said, JP, do you think Alabama is going to beat Kentucky this weekend? Well, we'll be talking about that on JP on Sports coming up next segment here. But, you know, Alabama has had some really, really bad matchups the last two games. They had Auburn and Missouri with big physical guards. That's not a good matchup. Alabama has smaller guards that are much quicker and have been struggling getting threes off against the lankier and bigger guards. Alabama's proven to be able to beat Kentucky at Kentucky earlier this season, so hopefully with this game being at Coleman, Alabama will be able to get the job done again. Well, the music's playing. We're going to take a quick timeout. We're going to come back with some JP on sports, so y'all make sure to stay tuned for that. This is Rightside Radio, and we'll be right back.
Alabama and Tennessee syndicated news talk leader, Rightside Radio. Phil Williams here live in the Rightside studios, man. We got the local, the state, the national, sometimes the international, and oh yeah, like the dude just said, solid, conservative, and just plain right. Well, all right, welcome to hour number 2. And this is we're gonna take a break from politics, take a break from culture, take a break from all the stuff. It's Friday afternoon, y'all. We got to talk about some sports. And I know I've told you before, but JP is like the guru of sports. I actually just ask him questions now. I have no idea what's going on in the world of sports till I talk to him. But JP has his own show on Saturday mornings called Off the Bench on the up in Huntsville. But he also just recently started a brand spanking new podcast right here on Rightside. And he's doing that every week now. First edition's already out. It's called Off the Bench. And I'm loving it, man. In fact, it's getting some traction online. I'm loving that too.
I know it's doing pretty well. So we'll see.
Let's do that. Going. Let's do that other one we do called JP on Sports. So you got a sound effect for me, so hit it. JP on Sports. All right, so there's your call. We do the first segment called the 3 and Out. He's got his top 3 stories he thinks are out there in the world of sports. Then we come back from a break. And we will do the 2-minute warnings. And I have to keep a timer with a buzzer. All right, dude. 3 and Out. Number 1, what do you got?
Well, I guess we're just going to have to settle for Canada being a U.S. territory instead of the 51st state because Canada got their get back last night after the first game that they lost. Connor McDavid ended up getting the game-winning goal in overtime. Did you watch the game?
I watched most of it. I actually fell asleep in the latter part of the regular time.
I did too. I was sitting there on my couch and I woke up and they were going to overtime. And so I watched pretty much up until most of the third period and then all of overtime. But yeah,
I woke up to Connor McDavid giving his victory interview.
Oh, really?
I was like, crap.
Yeah.
I went to bed.
I was actually kind of expecting the game to go to shootouts. I was like, this would be the picture perfect game to go to shootouts. Round 2 of U.S. Canada and then go into shootouts. But, you know, this game being in Boston instead of Montreal, we didn't have any of the booing of the anthem nonsense. I don't know if you watched the anthem, but I don't know if I've heard a crowd sing an anthem, like the U.S. anthem, that loud, you know, in real time. It was pretty epic. And there wasn't that much booing of the Canadian anthem either, and both teams end up, you know, shaking hands after the game. So I think you kind of gave the reference of this seems like just 2 brothers just kind of fighting, you know, but at the end of the day, we just, you know, we kind of respect each other. Trudeau did put out a tweet, though, of course, poking fun back at Trump, saying that we can't take Canada and we can't take their game, something like that. So, yeah, but ultimately, it's pretty incredible that the U.S. even beat Canada the first time, and then it was even close the second time because Canada's team is just stacked. Of Connor McDavid and then Sidney Crosby, who is kind of older now but is still a legend. And like that's Canada's game. I mean, that's what they're best at. So it is pretty incredible that the U.S. was able to take a game from Canada and then make it close the second time. It was pretty awesome. So I know I'm proud that the U.S. was even had it close, and we had some epic fights in the first one too. So
yeah, we did.
Not all is lost from that.
And I loved seeing the honorary captains come out early on the ice. You know, Gretzky being one of them for the Canadians, but he was of course playing in both sides of the border when he was in his height of his career. And then we had a member of the Olympic hockey team that was out there too, the U.S. Olympic hockey team, the U.S. Olympic hockey team from the Dream back in the day. All right, number 1, there it is, hockey. I knew it would be. What's number 2?
All right, well, we got college basketball still rolling on. Alabama has now dropped 2 back-to-back games. They lost against Auburn last weekend, and then they lost to Missouri on, Wednesday? So they're going through a rough patch right now, but they got a chance to redeem themselves against Kentucky at home, number 17 Kentucky. So they've already beaten Kentucky earlier in the year. This would be a good game to get back. And plus, they beat them at Rupp Arena, which I would think would be much harder than winning at home. So we'll see if Alabama is able to repeat that. And also, it's pretty incredible that with how hard the SEC schedule is, even with back-to-back losses, Alabama is still projected to be a number 1 seed in the March Madness tournament. So, you know, you don't want to make a habit of losing, but I think that just shows how good the SEC is, that you lost back-to-back games and you don't even drop it all in the projections for the March Madness. So we'll see if Alabama can get back on the winning column. And then Auburn, you know, they beat Alabama last weekend, and then they held off Arkansas from upsetting them at home. They won 67-60. So Calipari had Arkansas ready to go, but you're going to have to play your best game of the year to beat Auburn, especially at home. So Auburn was able to get a gritty win there, but then they're going to be playing Georgia at home. They already beat Georgia earlier in the year at Georgia. So my prediction would be that they're able to do it again in the jungle because it's even harder to win there. So,
and that's where the next IBOB is too, right?
Yeah, but
right there in the jungle.
Last game of the year for both teams will be in Auburn. So we'll
my
see.
gosh, I'm not saying nothing.
That game could. Well, Alabama losing to Missouri made this less of a possibility, but that game still could technically be like the game one that decides who wins the SEC regular season between Alabama and Auburn. So Auburn would have to lose one for that to happen.
There's never been a season like this.
No.
Never.
It's not just with Alabama and Auburn, but the SEC in general. It's pretty incredible with the kind of run that they're on right now. It's always been the ACC, and but it's flipped. So the SEC is now a football and a basketball conference predominantly.
Yeah.
Whoop, whoop. We could get 10 teams at least in the March Madness, which I will probably set a record. I'd imagine it'd set a record. I've never seen 10 teams from one conference go there. So winning the SEC tournament in Nashville is probably going to be just as hard, if not harder, than winning the March Madness.
Why don't we just go ahead and call the March Madness, the whole NCAA, just call it the SEC tournament?
The SEC Invitational.
Exactly.
So they thought they got out of it from the college football playoff, but it's like we're a basketball conference now.
Too good. All right, that's two. That all of that one. That's two. What's number 3 for the 3 and out?
Well, the biggest game of the weekend, I would say, is still in SEC basketball. I got number 6 Tennessee going up against number 7 Texas A&M at Texas A&M. Texas A&M is coming off of a ugly loss to Mississippi State. I think they lost by 14. But like I said, any loss in the SEC is not really a bad loss. So Texas A&M is still a really good team. They gave Alabama a really close game up until the end at Texas A&M. This is still like a top 3 seed in the March Madness, Texas A&M being. And then Tennessee's coming off a win against their in-state rival of Vanderbilt in Knoxville. It was close. Vanderbilt was up at halftime, but Tennessee ended up coming back and getting a strong win there. So this is going to be a really good matchup. This game will be at Texas A&M, though, so Texas A&M has the home court advantage. It's a hard place to play going to Texas A&M, so Tennessee's going to have to bring their A game. But yeah, I would say this is probably the game of the weekend for sure. Tennessee, I think, is tied with Alabama right now for second in the SEC now, with Alabama dropping that loss to Missouri. So look out for Tennessee. Everybody has been talking about Alabama and Auburn in terms of who's going to win the SEC, but Tennessee is kind of hung out and stayed kind of below the radar a little bit. So we'll see if Tennessee can make a run and make a push to be the regular season champs for the SEC, but they're going to have to get a gritty win on the road against Texas A&M. So we'll see if they're able to do that. But, this is 6 versus 7, so this is another SEC like top game of the weekend. I think that College Game Day will be there as well. So like I said, the SEC basketball wise is just continuing to put out the best games of the weekend, it seems. So
my gosh,
it's a good one.
So 2 out of 3 is basketball, which I guess makes sense because that's the season we're in.
Yeah.
But how are we fixed on time right now?
We got about a couple more minutes for the segments up.
So all right, let's go into overtime then. What do you see coming? We got spring A-Day games coming. We got recruiting going on for NCAA football. We've got any number of other sports that actually exist, like golf and MMA and whatever. Yeah. So if you had to pick as to what's going to be the next big news story outside of NCAA March Madness, what's it going to be?
So it's funny you say A-Day because there's a trend coming on of teams canceling their spring games.
What?
Texas yesterday canceled their spring game. There's been some rumors of people moving more to an NFL style of off season instead of have a spring.
Why not? They get paid like NFL.
Exactly. And so I guess I think it's much easier on the body for, to have a little bit more of a break and more of a spread out off season than have like a really hard spring, play an exhibition game, and then get into summer. It seems like teams think the NFL model is more intriguing. So I would not be surprised if soon we see Alabama cancel theirs. Like I said, Texas has already canceled theirs yesterday. But I think we're going to see spring games go bye-bye for good because
Wow.
schools are going to, or coaches are going to see it be like, what's the point? You know, what's the point of doing it at all? So it's crazy. I'll say I'm not a big fan of that because it's free and you get chances for people who, you know, maybe with their schedule or whatever can't make a regular season game. That's a fun game to go to get to see your team, get to see new players.
They do media days.
Yeah, and then you get to see, you know, new recruits playing in the A-Day game, and it's just a fun ordeal. So it would be sad to see spring games go by the wayside, but Texas, I think, was the first one to pull the trigger and officially cancel theirs.
Really?
Yeah.
Friggin' Texas.
Texas leading the way with that. Like I said, it just kind of seems like a meaningless
Hook
thing
'em
to
horns,
them,
except
so.
when they feel like not coming on the field.
Yeah, exactly. You know, we'll take that one. We'll take a break on spring games. But yeah, it's nuts to see.
It just also seems like a loss of tradition too.
Well, that's the college football world and college sports in general is a loss of tradition and more towards efficiency. It's pretty crazy to see, but
it's a business now.
It is a full-fledged business. I don't know. Maybe Kalen DeBoer will be, you know, want to hold on to it for a little longer at Alabama, along with other SEC schools. But I don't know. I think it's just delaying the inevitable. I think a lot of schools will be canceling their spring games this year, unfortunately.
Wow. All right, brother.
If you thought that was bad, I got another good college football one in the 2-minute warning. That's pretty nuts.
Well, speaking of which, let's go ahead and take a break right now, JP. We'll do that. We're on JP on Sports, taking a little break from culture and politics and moving us into the weekend because, you know, every once in a while you got to let your brain rest. We'll have plenty more of culture and politics to talk about. Right now, we're taking a break. We'll come right back. Phil Williams, Rightside Radio. Y'all stay tuned. We will be right back. And we are back. Phil Williams, Rightside Radio. Solid conservative, just plain right. Man, saving the world one soundbite at a time. All right, we're back with round 2 of JP on Sports. We call this section the 2-minute warning. I've actually got a timer and a buzzer. So with that being said, we kick it off. He's got 2 minutes for everything in sports he can think of. JP, first 2 minutes, go.
Well, we were talking about the big U.S.-Canada hockey game that took place. But just besides that game, this made rounds in the sports world because we see the NBA All-Star game, which actually took place the same weekend. This was kind of like NHL's All-Star game. This was a break in the regular season, and it was time for them to, was supposed to be a break, I should say. They ended up playing games and high level games against Canada, but it's caused a discussion in the sports world of should the NBA take notice, because NHL showed that you can have an exhibition like a break in the season be competitive, be entertaining, be intriguing to the fans.
Yeah.
And the NHL brought in a ton of new fans and people who are going to start tuning into the regular season after that. I know I
got news. Charlene Williams watched the game last night.
Like that's what I'm saying. Like people who don't watch hockey saw that and were intrigued and are probably going to, a lot of them are going to start watching the regular season now because of that. Where we see on the flip side, the NBA has seen it just as a break, a vacation period. Guys aren't playing in the All-Star game because they're, quote, injured, even though 2 days later they're playing just fine in the regular season. It's become a joke, and it's become, meaningless. It's lost all of its, I think I saw it was the worst ratings or one of the worst ratings of All-Star Weekend ever for the NBA. But it's caused a lot of discussion. PK Subban, who is a former hockey player, went on to First Take and just completely bashed the NBA and said that you wonder why your ratings are so bad because you don't care about the fans, you don't care about the product, all you care about is yourself and being, your own money or whatever. And it caused a lot of discussion of should the NBA take a look at what just happened in the four nations and try to replicate that to see if they can get more fans into their league. I think that's interesting, and it set a narrative and it set a tone that hopefully the NBA was watching.
That's perfect. 2 minutes. Oh, got a buzzer? I didn't hear a buzzer. Buzzer sound. There it is. All right, I'm resetting. And by the way, I agree with that completely. And I saw that in the NFL Pro Bowl game where they would just half step. They weren't even trying to block.
The Pro Bowl is a good one too. They're playing flag football now.
Exactly right. All right, next 2 minutes. Ready? Go.
Well, this is a story that I've noticed over the last couple months, but I thought it was just kind of a joke or whatever. But now it's starting to intrigue me a little bit because it's starting to pick up some steam again. Stephen A. Smith has been flirting with a presidential run.
What?
Stephen
A. Smith, the sports commentator?
The controversial, brash sports analyst has been flirting with running for president. He went on his podcast, I believe this was earlier this week, and he said that I'm in the news because the Democratic Party is down to the bottom. They suck right now, horrible, because they don't have a voice. That's why Stephen A. Smith is a candidate. And then he also said that, who said I'll be a Democrat? I have conservative ideas. I believe in free market capitalism. And he said he also believes in patrolling the border, strong national security. He said he will be a centrist-leaning left.
Oh my gosh.
Instead of a liberal, per se.
A centrist-leaning left.
That was in his own words. But James Carville, who... in a less cleaned up version, said that Stephen A. Smith doesn't know his butt from a hole in the ground in politics, and pretty much bashed him.
That'd be true.
Yeah,
that would be true.
A couple of days ago, he pretty much bashed him and said that there's a lot more talent in the Democratic Party than he thinks. The Democratic Party just has to prop them up, like Shapiro and guys like that.
Not that I argued too much over that, but they said that about Trump too when it started.
That's true. Yeah. But an interesting poll that was this was on January 27th. This poll was done by McLaughlin. Stephen A. Smith was polling at 2%, which is a lot higher than you would think. I mean, for reference, Shapiro and Waltz were at 3%, and AOC was at 6%. So Stephen A. already, without even making a run or just simply talking about it, is at 2% already. So do I think he'll run? Probably not. However, I think the fact that Carville is getting so angry about it, maybe behind the scenes there's more going on with it.
So who would be his vice president? Charles Barkley? I mean, what are we going to do?
Shaq.
That's it. You got it. 2 minutes. Go. All right. Reset the clock. That was interesting. Okay. Next. Go.
So I mentioned that I have another infuriating NCAA football story. there's been a rumor, a report that the college football playoff has been talking about expanding even more into 14 to 16 teams.
God.
But here's the caveat.
You know why they made money on it?
Well, yeah, here's the caveat. The two conferences who are leading the way for that are the SEC and the Big Ten. And here's their proposed model, that there's 4 automatic spots for both conferences, the SEC and the Big Ten, into the playoff every year. And the ACC and the Big 12 will each get 2. 1 spot for the best group of 5 team, and then Notre Dame, assuming they're in the top 14, will get an automatic bid. And then the remaining spots will be determined by the committee. But the Big Ten and the SEC would triple their current allotments with this new deal. If they're able to get 4 automatic spots for the SEC and the Big Ten, it's just crazy to me. Like, obviously, the SEC and Big Ten are better conferences than, like, the MAC or the Mountain West, but that doesn't mean you should get the SEC 4 automatic bids.
Yeah.
You know, it's
It's a little ostentatious.
yeah, the narrative that Alabama should have been in because they could have beaten Boise State, they could have beaten SMU. I'm an Alabama fan, and I'm still saying you lose 24-3 to Oklahoma, you shouldn't be in the playoff. Like, putting teams in that that have such ugly losses that keep them out, it just ruins the whole. It ruins the whole point of the playoff, in my opinion. And I'm worried that it's just going to be a money grab, and they're going to start expanding and not caring about the product and just caring about the money. So I think this is a disaster. I think the playoff should at most be 8 teams, and even 8 is kind of pushing it. I think 4 was not as bad as people thought either. So let's stop this movement that we see of expanding the playoffs, especially giving 4 automatic bids to the SEC and Big Ten. It's just nuts to me.
And I'll be honest, there's your buzzer. And I'll be honest with you, we're gonna be playing football all the way into May.
Exactly.
If they keep this up.
Like,
there won't be an 8-day game because they're still in the playoffs.
You know, these guys have to actually physically play the games
and go to school,
right?
by the way, too.
Yes. I know I'm a full-fledged MMA guy there.
All right, that's it, man. You just heard it. It's JP on Sports. Good stuff, man. As always, you can hear him on Saturday mornings on the Ump out of Huntsville, and stay tuned because his next podcast comes out early next week. The Out of Right Field podcast, sports and political commentary all mixed together. All right, we're taking a break. Phil Williams, Rightside Radio. Y'all stay tuned. We will be right back.
You're listening live to Rightside Radio with Phil Williams. It's hard to go wrong when you're on the right side. Rightside Radio. Solid, conservative, and just plain right.
Alabama and Tennessee's syndicated news talk leader, Rightside Radio. Phil Williams here live in the Rightside studios. Man, we got the local, the state, the national, sometimes the international. And oh yeah, like the dude just said, solid, conservative, and just plain right. Well, welcome to hour number 3 on a Friday. Yes, it's me. I am back in the studio. It's real. JP, I got bumped. I got bumped by Trump.
Wait. Say that again.
I got bumped by Trump. That's just wrong. That is, all right, well, skippity. How about that? No, I was supposed to be on News Nation, and the producer comes on and goes, excuse me, Colonel, we've got the president going live right now. We're going to have to go ahead and bump this segment. And I said, like, for good? And he goes, yeah. So I'm off, all dressed up for nothing. That's all right. That's all right.
It is what it is.
If you're going to get bumped by Trump. You know what I'm saying?
Exactly. Yeah.
I mean, if they had bumped me because a trained monkey came on to do a dance, I'd be a little perturbed.
Yeah, at least you weren't bumped by Biden. That would have been even worse.
Okay. Well, you salute the rank, not the man. But let me get a few text messages. And then interesting thing is I just had an employee at the FBI in Huntsville send me a copy of the email that was sent to every employee today by the new director, Kash Patel. So I'll check into that here momentarily. I got a really super nice text. Wow. It's long, but it's so gracious. Joanna from Hartselle. Joanna, thank you. I mean, that just blesses me. She basically says, first I heard you on the Dale Jackson show, and I thought to myself, I like this guy. I wonder who he is. And then I made sure to catch your name, and a month later, VNN was announcing you'd have your own show. And I've been listening since day one. So she's an OG Rightside Ruffian, JP. OG Rightside Ruffian.
Day one.
Says, congratulations on your show's success. It's your love for the Lord and your public and military service that won me over. Now, if we could just get you to, no, I'm not running for that often. No. But thank you, Joanna. And then she says, I won't give up hoping. I also chuckle to myself every time you shake your paper, a stack of papers. Thanks for all the hard work and preparation you put into each show. I wish there weren't so many station breaks, but I understand why. And it says, love you too, JP. You rock, dude. Boston,
Thanks.
Van Halen, Stone Temple Pilots. Your music clips are everything. Joanna from Hartselle. That, I'm good all weekend now. I am good all weekend. Get her address for a t-shirt. Let me get a couple more. Thank you, Joanna, again. David at Buc-ee's says, let's see, JP, can Alabama afford another loss to Auburn and still be a number 1 seed? How many SEC teams do you think will be number 1 seeds? Wow.
Depends on how Alabama does in the stretch leading up to Auburn. They can probably afford a loss to like a number 3 Florida and a loss to Auburn, but not many more losses Alabama can afford and still be a 1 seed. I would say about a 50% chance we get 2 number 1 seeds, or 2 SEC number 1 seeds, Auburn and then Florida probably.
Oh, you think Auburn and Florida?
If not Alabama. If not Alabama, it'll be Auburn and Florida.
So you think we'll get 2 though, regardless?
At least, yeah. I'd say there's a good chance we get 2 at least.
Okay. There you go. David at Buc-ee's, you ask, you have received. Brand new texter, Scott from Tony, Alabama, said, this is Scott, first-time texter, U.S. Naval Academy, class of 87, retired from the U.S. Army. Oh, wow. Dual service. Says, thank you for your service, by the way, Scott. Says, my comment, Trump's business approach to managing the federal bureaucracy reminds me a lot of what Ross Perot was talking about when he was running for president in 92. I voted for him then. It was people like me that took the conservative vote from Bush that got Clinton elected the first time. Well, okay. Yeah. But nonetheless, I agree with you. He is taking a very business-like approach to running even the Pentagon. And there's a lot of liberal freakout right now. In fact, the segment I was going to be on News Nation a moment ago was on this very topic. The fact that you're looking at the downsizing of the federal government. Let's keep in mind, these are not tenured employees. These are not employees that are locked in to a contract. They may have some measure of protection under their respective unions, but the truth be told, they are not immune from a reduction in force. And a reduction in force, if justified by the chief executive, is exactly what it sounds like. It's a reduction in force because there is a need of the government to do that. The private sector has to live that way. It does. And the idea that government doesn't is not the free market. It is not capitalism. It is not the democracy we grew up in. That's like saying that the bureaucracy is immune from any type of negative ramifications of a bad economy or bad decision making. And it's just not. John from Huntsville, did JP just say it is what it is? Did you say that? Did you say that?
I did in response to you getting bumped, yeah.
I didn't even catch it.
I actually
some push-ups.
No, I actually say that saying a lot. So it probably slip out a couple more times too.
Wow. All right, listen, we got plenty of stuff, but I got to tell you, so this is a total aside, but it kind of goes back to that first dipper we had, budget bill and more. So Kash Patel was just sworn in. He was confirmed yesterday, took the oath of office just a little while ago. And what we're looking at right now is I got a copy of the email that Director Kash Patel sent out to all employees as a new FBI director. And he talks about the fact that while I'm new to the Bureau's ranks, he spent his career in government service and the past decade in national security, working with the FBI and many of its partners. He says, my commitment has been and will always be to pursuing justice and upholding the rule of law. And I look forward to continuing that. Then he goes on to talk about threats, and he talks about the FBI being a critical part of the role in securing our nation. And then he says this, here's his two priorities, he said. He said, my priorities for our organization are twofold. First, to provide you, members of the FBI, with the tools and resources you need to keep our communities safe. This will include, he says, streamlining our operations at headquarters. Notice he said at headquarters, which is that's a key piece. He didn't say, I intend to thin the ranks overall. He said, basically, the ivory tower is going to get smaller, is what it sounds like. He said this will include streamlining our operations at headquarters while bolstering the presence of field agents across the nation and collaborating even more closely with our essential partners in state and local law. So that sounds an awful lot like the ranks will benefit from a downsizing in the bureaucracy side of the FBI.
That just seems like common sense to me. Like, I don't get why people are in uproar about that. Like, nothing that he just said is like, controversial. You mean FBI agents are actually going to go out and be FBI agents nationwide? It's like, wow.
Well, see, this is like the conversation about school choice.
Mm-hmm.
It depends how you answer those questions, right? How do you answer who's best to make decisions about the child, the parent or legal guardian? Where do the tax dollars go, to educate the child or to the system? And how you answer those two questions guides everything. In this particular case, how do you feel about big government versus smaller government? If you believe in big government, then you believe that the bureaucracy at the headquarters should never be touched. And if you believe in a streamlined government that puts services out there for the people that is designed to benefit, like you and I, then you absolutely agree with the idea of streamlining the ivory tower.
Mm-hmm.
And
actually going out and protecting citizens instead of kicking their feet up on the desk and waiting for their pension.
Like here, the Federal Bureau of Investigation. You go investigate. Mm-hmm. You don't just sit back in your office and think up ways to try and prevent the politicians you don't like from taking office.
And that's not saying everybody in the FBI headquarters is bad.
No.
But come on, there's far too many.
And you know what? And here's the thing. It's like the Pentagon. There's a time and a place for you to come out of the field and go serve at headquarters and maybe go back to the field. Or for that matter, you graduate up in rank and you serve in the headquarters. But it shouldn't be the repository of far more people than is ever needed who then suck the resources and also, by the way, become entrenched bureaucrats who just try to stymie the processes. Mm-hmm. All right, that was the first goal. Second goal, Kash Patel says, is to ensure that we rebuild the American people's trust in the FBI. And that's huge. I mean, let's hope that gone are the days of people having someone knock on their door and say, we'd like to talk to you about your social media posts. Or having someone arrested because they were praying outside of a abortion clinic. Or, having someone find their door being kicked in with their children screaming because they were part of a pro-life march or protest outside of a clinic. Or for that matter, how about some of the other stuff we saw like January 6th where We're learning now that something like 33% of all FBI agents were tasked with nothing but January 6th investigations. Just ungodly. Anyway, restoring trust in the FBI. I think, let me say it this way. I believe that the rank and file of the FBI are still there for the right reasons. I believe the bureaucracy needs to be culled, but I believe that the rank and file is still in mission for a purpose. And I also believe that the vast majority of America wants to trust the FBI. We want to know. We want to know that we can look over our shoulder and see that Big Brother is a friend, not an enemy, that we can see that the FBI is there to make sure that we're secure. And that's not too much to ask, since that actually is the charter of the organization.
Exactly. That's what their job is.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, we're going to take a quick break. We'll come right back. And I got to give you a quick update on something. Soft on crime? Are we watching something happen in the Alabama legislature right now that could be considered soft on crime? And then I am not going to the weekend without talking about Israel, because, y'all, this is a heinous thing that happened and it should never be allowed again. Phil Williams, Rightside Radio. Y'all stay tuned. We will be right back. And we are back. Phil Williams, Rightside Radio, solid conservative and just plain right. Man, saving the world one soundbite at a time. So I got to tell you, I'm going to take a few minutes here. This is a planned segment. This is one of my dippers. I'm not going to give it as much time as it could have had because that letter from Kash Patel came in. I wanted to read it. But I think it's fair to say I've got some concerns when I see Republicans carrying what used to be Democrat bills that appear to be weak on crime. What? Yes, that's what I'm saying. So you may recall that Governor Ivey's State of the State speech she gave just a few weeks ago, she said that one of her priorities was to basically back the blue and to make the state more secure. I'm for that. I find no fault in that. That is a worthy goal. She didn't specify a lot about what she's going to do. She was going to do something like banning Glock switches. Okay. How about no? But she also said she was going to create a metro area crime suppression unit, which I think that's worked well in Montgomery, and I'm glad. Beyond that, I don't know what else. So I'm not sure if this falls into that wheelhouse. But I got to tell you, right now there's a bill that was carried last year by Representative Chris England, a Democrat from Tuscaloosa. Chris England, good dude. I know him personally, but he's notoriously liberal. He's also the former chair of the Democrat Party, and he's also typically soft on crime. How's that for an intro? He had a bill last year called House Bill 29, and it was called the Second Chance Bill. It's a pretty name, but it's not necessarily what it really is. The Second Chance Bill. It's more like the second bite at the apple bill. So his bill ostensibly would say that someone who has been convicted and sentenced to life in prison, that after they've served 25 years can petition to go ahead and have a second chance to have their sentencing reduced so they can get out. Well, that's not life in prison. Now, it did say not for violent offenses. Okay, well, that covers most of it. But we're looking at right now, that bill failed last year. In fact, that bill didn't even pass getting a procedural vote to go ahead and go forward to a final vote. That bill did not pass. Republicans stood in its way and said, no, that ain't us, until this year. Right now, you've got the same bill being carried by Republican State Senator Will Barfoot, and I know Will Barfoot, and he's very conservative, so I'm confused as to how there's got to be a backstory here. I'm also confused why Americans for Prosperity in Alabama, which is a conservative policy group, is supportive of it. It's Senate Bill 156, the Second Chance Act, the same thing. And it also sounds an awful lot to me like what they're doing is trying to make sure that they are getting people out of prisons because we're still overcrowded. We've had an overcrowding problem in Alabama's prisons for decades. And right now, this Second Chance Act is being carried by a Republican, and it actually got out of the Senate already. So this is moving. Will Barfoot is the chairman of the Senate Judiciary Committee. Americans for Prosperity is a conservative group. This is the same bill that was carried last year by the former chair of the Democrat Party. And I look at it and go, what the heck? I mean, are we seeing literal soft on crime from Republicans? I hope not. Are we seeing like, let's run a bill. We got to clean some of these people out of the prisons. We need more space. We need more bed space. That's not the solution. Now, if they've served 25 years for nonviolent crimes, they're probably not going to be as big an issue. But if they're serving a sentence that says life without parole, then I got news. They had the opportunity for a grand jury. They had the opportunity for a trial by jury. They had the right to appeal. They had even the right to have their appeal reconsidered or reheard. And now we're going to say, and oh, by the way, here's one more. So are we creating something that doesn't have to be created is what I'm saying. And I look at this and go, it just feels squishy. So somebody out there can correct me. If you know there's more to the story than I do, I'll reach out to one of them. And that story came out for me today. I'd never seen it before. And all of a sudden I've got Republicans carrying former Democrat bills, especially when they're Democrats that I know what they stand for. And I will say this. we have got to do something about the crime rate in some of our cities. So I do applaud the governor calling for these metro crime suppression units. The question I have is, having seen success in Montgomery with this, which is a combination of state, county, and local, they create a task force and they go at it. And they've been given like sort of carte blanche to do some things that they wouldn't normally get to do. And we hear it's having good effect in Montgomery, which, by the way, is one of our blue areas in the state, and it's still working. Randall Woodfin is the mayor of Birmingham. Liberal Mayor Randall Woodfin doesn't want it. His crime rate is through the roof. We've got to get our Birmingham back. We've got to. I mean, cities around this region, Birmingham, Memphis, a few others, you look at it and go, my gosh, y'all, I know you care about people more than this, but part of it is secure. To provide for the common defense, that's not just the U.S. military. That is sometimes the safe streets of our local communities. And so I'm very hopeful we're going to see Birmingham be put on the position of having to have one of these metro crime suppression units and being a part of something that actually turns the tide and brings the stats back in the right direction for crime in Birmingham. All right, we're going to come right back, and I got to talk about Israel. Y'all, this is something else. This cannot be overlooked, and I can't go to the weekend without talking about it. Phil Williams, Rightside Radio. Y'all stay tuned. We'll be right back. Hey, all you Rightside ruffians out there, you are listening to Rightside Radio, solid conservative, just plain right. And we are back. Phil Williams, Rightside Radio, solid conservative and just plain right. Covering down on some major ground across the southeast U.S. of A. Y'all, I'm talking about this show. Goes like from Huntsville back over to Chattanooga, from Tuscaloosa back over to Gadsden. I'm talking about all the way down to that prettiest little town on the plains called Auburn. And yes, even big old patches of Georgia and Mississippi thrown in just for good measure. All right. Hey, listen, I gotta spend some time on a topic that is just, this is just heinous. It's just gross. It's also infuriating. It's so people don't realize that what Israel faced on October 27th, a year and a half ago, October 7th, I'm sorry, of 2023, was per capita for them bigger than 9/11 was for us. And I'm not mitigating 9/11 at all. 9/11 was horrible. It was a gut punch. It was a loss of over 3,000 people. On a per capita basis, Israel lost a higher percentage of its population than we did on that day, 9/11, on October 7th. And yes, we had innocent people die. Some of them, went down in horrible situations with the buildings on fire and planes that are crashing in, and knowing the plane was crashing as they went it, and all of that was devastating. It was horrible for 9/11, and then the aftermath of rebuilding and then going to war. What the Jewish people went through was of a different nature. Was it horrible? Yes. Was it terrorism? Absolutely. But when you have people storm into your bedroom in the quiet of the night and then behead your children and rape your wife and then take your grandfather captive and hold him for a month in a tunnel or for months in a tunnel. This is of a different nature. This is like not just trying to kill someone and make a statement. This is taking pleasure in the destruction of people. This is taking some kind of perverse joy in bringing pain and suffering. There is nothing here that is honorable. There's nothing here that has any measure of, integrity as like on the battlefield when a soldier may be on the opposite side, but he's fighting for his cause. It's not that at all. These were not soldiers. These were criminals. Well, what just happened in the last few days? I got a piece here. I could pick them all over. I pulled this one from Daily Caller. Daily Caller points out, so we're in the middle of this ceasefire, and we're demanding the return of the hostages. That's part of and why it takes we'll do a couple this week. I think we can bring out a few next week. Yeah, we might have 4 more the following week. How about you bring them friggin' home? But what they did in the last few days, apparently, a mother and her 2 infant children. I'm talking one of them was 2 and one of them was 5. The same ages as my grandchildren. A 2-year-old, a 5-year-old, and their mother were taken, along with their father, were taken and held hostage. Why do you take babies hostage? It's not like you're trying to raise them up. It's not like you're trying to take them and make them into slaves. No, they just put them in a tunnel and kept them there. We've learned now they executed them. So as part of the quote unquote releasing the hostages, we got 4 of them back this past week, or the last few days. We got them back in boxes. Except we didn't. It says crowds of adults were cheering and waving as Hamas fighters rode by in trucks with their weapons raised, wearing their Hamas dress uniforms as they carried in the caskets like trophies. I'm adding a little bit here, but that's what they did. They carried them like trophies. The crowd thought it was the coolest thing in the world. On the coffin, it said the date of their so-called arrest. Their arrest on what authority and for what crime were they arrested? For living? So they're parading these caskets like trophies. And then we've not only got the mother and the 2 infant children, it turns out the 4th one that they released in a box was an 83-year-old man. So yeah, these are scary people to you. If you need to go on the battlefield, Hamas, and kill 5-year-olds, 2-year-olds, and their mothers who are grieving as they try to hold them tight, and then an 83-year-old man who's already infirm, I'm just saying, you are not men. You're not. But what we've also learned now is the body of the mother in one box was really not her. We don't know who it was. DNA testing proves, we learn now, that it was not her. Tel Aviv, AP reports from Tel Aviv, Israel has now identified the remains of the child hostages as being real, but says the body that was in the other box was not their mother. We also learned, too, little tacky stuff, like not only did it say the day of their arrest on the box, it also had a lock on the box, so you couldn't just open it, and they didn't give them the key. Okay, and then Israel had to have the boxes scanned to make sure there were no bombs in them, because apparently they'd done that in the past. National Security Advisor Mike Waltz had some comments about this, and I've got an audio clip of that, and I want to play it. He was on Laura Ingraham talking about Hamas. Keep in mind, Mike Waltz, former Green Beret congressman, now the National Security Advisor. Here's what he had to say, and I may stop you along the way. Go ahead and play it.
Sorry, I'll turn my up.
Would basically rain down on Hamas if all the hostages, weren't released. Well, they're releasing some dead hostages, Hamas, with those hideous videos circulating on the internet of Hamas parading through the streets with the coffins of children and their mother. I mean, it's just the most depraved, evil thing you can imagine. But what can we expect more from this administration, given the fact that these hostages still, all of them, some have, but many still have not been released?
Well, Laura, and I'll just let everyone know that sadly and tragically, we thought that family perhaps had been killed by an errant bombing. In fact, we now know that Hamas executed them. These are twin children. These are babies. This was their mother. This is a sick terrorist organization, no different than ISIS. And we cannot have Gaza ruled by a terrorist organization. Hamas has to be destroyed. We'll continue to enter in to some type of negotiation to get as many hostages out. But at the end of the day, Gaza will be ruled by Hamas no more, who has repeatedly said their full intent is to have more October 7th, more attacks. They fully intend to continue to attack Israel if allowed to remain in place. And we stand with Israel in making sure that doesn't happen.
Stop there.
Well, I mean,
all right. So first of all, I am so glad we have an unequivocal stance now toward Israel. There's no more of the political ambiguity that we saw in the Biden administration, where, well, Israel, we're for you. Those weapons you bought, yeah, we'll get those to you. Wink, wink, nod, nod. Hey, by the way, we're going to put a multi-billion-dollar or multi-million-dollar pier into Gaza so that we can bring them supplies. What the heck? Who are you for? Now, I'll be the first to admit the Biden administration did great things. Did I say that? Did great things in terms of helping Israel turn back the attacks from Iran. They did. We provided assistance to their Iron Dome and to their Air Force capabilities in taking out all the attacks of missiles and drones from Iran. Great. But there's always been this crazy ambiguity about, well, Hamas, and looking the other way as Palestinian flags are raised over university buildings in the United States. These are not, and by the way, I'm sick of seeing Palestinian flags in front of Congressman's office. I think every time that they do that, somebody ought to take them a picture of these children who were executed in a tunnel somewhere in Gaza and make that a part of the display. How about that? Keep playing that. Let's see what else he says.
I mean, the idea that they could continue to live there. We don't have the video for some reason, but I mean, it's the most depressing, depraved video of Hamas and children clapping at the bodies of these small children being removed from where they were being kept. I mean, applauding, clapping, cheering. That's who we're dealing with. That's what they've done to their children in Gaza. And the idea that any of these people could remain is ludicrous, completely ludicrous.
But let's even go back, rewind the clock back last year when you had people in our college campuses chanting from the river to the sea, the anti-Semitism that we saw, naked and bare in front of the world, and cheering on an organization that would do things like this, a terrorist group that has radicalized the next generation as well. So this is a complex issue, but what is crystal clear is Hamas has got to go, their leadership has to go, and we are working with the Israelis to do just that.
That's Michael Waltz, National Security Advisor. And listen, what's happening now, though, too, is the way that Hamas is handling this it's endemic to who they are. Let's be clear. Hamas is a terrorist organization, but they also run the governance of the Gaza Strip. Hamas needs to be eradicated completely and fully. This sort of ceasefire peace agreement that we've got going right now, which, by the way, was started under the Biden administration, but it's still ongoing. It's about to fall apart. In fact, ABC News has a piece that came out just this morning. Netanyahu now vows revenge after Israel says Hamas sent back the wrong body, and her name, by the way, was Shiri Bibas. So Shiri Bibas's body is why'd you send us the wrong body? I mean, who does that? So not only did they capture a 32-year-old woman and her 2 children, which, by the way, I quoted their ages wrong. It was Ariel Bibas, who was 4 years old, and Kiffer Bibas, who was just a few months old, 8.5 months old, and then 84-year-old Oded Lifshitz. This is unbelievable, but it's causing the entire piece. And by the way, you know what, Hamas, when the missiles start flying again, when the tanks start rolling, when the buildings get flattened, you have no one to blame but yourself. There's nobody to blame except Hamas. And when the people of Palestine go, woe is us, what do we do? How about this? You get rid of Hamas and we won't have to worry about it. You tell Hamas they're no longer welcome. You tell them to stop digging tunnels underneath your hospitals and schools and stop seizing babies. And then how about this? Stop teaching your children to cheer and laugh as the coffins holding dead babies are carried around like trophies. Okay, look, I couldn't go to the weekend without venting that out. I had to. It was beyond the pale. That was not battlefield. That was not collateral damage. That was not somebody who was caught in the wrong place at the wrong time. That was somebody who was intentionally taken from their home, crying, at 8.5 months old, taken to a tunnel somewhere, abused. By the way, their father was released, but he was held separately from them. He was tortured while he was held. And oh, by the way, he was also taunted with the things they were doing to his family over and over again. And now he finds out they didn't even send back his wife's body. That's who we're dealing with. If you have some young skull full of mush who likes to wear their keffiyeh and talk big about from the river to the sea and put the Palestinian flag on their dorm room wall, square him away with a picture of the Bibas family. How about that? All right, we're taking a break. We'll come right back, clean up a few text messages, and head on into the weekend. I think I better lighten the mood, dude. Wow. That was heavy for the end of a Friday.
I was just going to let you vent all that out. I feel like I had to get it out.
I had to. Phil Williams, Rightside Radio. We'll be right back. And we are back. Phil Williams, Rightside Radio. Solid, conservative, and just plain right. Making common sense like a superpower. All right, you guys, listen, we're about to head into the Friday close of business time frame. So you guys that are on the road going home, be careful. The grades are already in from John from Huntsville. He says JP gets a C+. JP. Because he received a deduction of 20 points. What did you do, JP?
For saying it is what it is.
Oh, Lord Jesus.
Apparently that's worth a 20-point deduction there.
Wow. Watch it. Which means today's winner is the magnificent Phil Williams with an A double plus. Thank you, John. Appreciate you. Congratulations. Have a great weekend. You too, man. Lynn from Tanner says, I literally had to pull over when you told the story about the Beavis family. Said it brought me to tears. It's so sad that those people had to go through that. And what Americans don't understand is that could easily happen to any of us. With the Biden administration leaving the borders wide open for terrorists to come in, it could happen to any of us. So for everyone who's complaining about the Trump administration sending immigrants back, they should be thankful because one of those terrorists could get them in the night here in America. Wow, Lynn, thank you for that. That's a solid reminder right there. Shag Nasty, the atheist, checking in, says it'd be nice if people quit killing each other over worthless land. Well, you know what? They don't think it's worthless. And truthfully, you may have land that you think is your castle, and that's what matters. Marcus from Huntsville says people need to let it sink in that they had to do DNA testing to verify who the woman was, or rather it wasn't in this case. God, Marcus, I hadn't really thought of it that way. You know, it's a great point. They couldn't tell. They had to DNA test the remains because, for whatever reason, it wasn't visibly noticeable. Jeez. David from Madison said, in regards to the gangs south of the border being newly recognized as terrorist groups and to Hamas savages, I can almost guarantee you that a few select elements within JSOC have received their warning orders. You know what? I hope so. Joint Special Operations Command, stand up, fellas. Let's go ahead and get them spun up. Tier 1 on the move. Darlene from Gadsden. Hey, Darlene, says Al Sharpton owes like $7 million in income tax. Why isn't somebody trying to collect that? I don't know. And then Gary MS from Huntsville says, JP, if you feel the need to say, it is what it says, just say SOCKS.
You get, they said below, it's a play on the Spanish way of saying
SOCKS.
It is what it
as
is.
in Spanish.
Yes.
Okay, let's don't ever do that again. Have you learned your lesson now? All right, hey, listen, I got an update, by the way, that text that came in from text that came in from one of the FBI folks who said the update about Kash Patel. Where did I go? I'm scrolling back through because it's actually in my phone. They texted me personally. Hello, where is it? There it is. Okay. I told you earlier we had that copy of that email that came out from Kash Patel. He sent an update. And get this. Said that he absolutely intends to reduce the footprint in the National Capital Region, reallocate those personnel to field offices and Redstone Arsenal. Well, and also support and drive more impactful investigations, enhance field resources, and operational capabilities for protection of the American people. What's that sound like? Time to build a new overpass on the Parkway.
Yep. That means 1,000 more people coming to Huntsville, because I think that's the amount of space they're filling, 1,000 people.
In fact, it's funny you say that because Tuberville and Britt, 1819 News has a story that's up right now, by the way, came out today. Tuberville and Britt are urging the new FBI director, Kash Patel, to fill 1,000 employee slots at Redstone Arsenal.
Yep. And I mean, he told Katie that he would do that and take a trip to Redstone. So we may see Kash coming to Huntsville soon.
You know what? I'm all in. Can we get him in here for a podcast?
Hey, yeah.
Let's do it. I'd love to get Kash Patel in.
I'm sure he's quite busy.
I'm sure that he is, but you know what? We are Rightside Media.
Yeah. I think that I agree with that.
Tammy from Adiana just says, tickets, please. For what do I miss?
I don't know.
I don't either. Maybe she's texting a friend. All right, listen, you guys. Have an amazing weekend. And I mean that when I say it. Have an amazing weekend. May the Lord God bless you and keep you and bring everything to bear that you would wish to happen. And I got to say, there's more of us than there are of them. God is still very much on his throne. Y'all stay in the fight. We'll see you Monday.